Paul writing to the Colossians says this: "If you then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. For you are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God." As you all know, we had an election last week, and I don't ever like to talk about politics in church, and I don't. And the reason I don't is because I don't think it belongs. The reason I don't think it belongs is because I respect each one of you as individuals enough to believe that you're smart enough to make your own decisions on matters like that and think through issues. And so I just rely on you as individuals to be smart enough, and it's within your prerogative to think things through and make your own decisions about them. And the other reason is because we have far more important things to talk about. As we just read here, Paul said, "Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth." But on the other hand, I know from talking to people and from hearing from even relatives of people in my own family, sometimes when there's a big change, things are a lot different. It causes anxiety and concern. And so I just wanted to bring you this message today by way of, we might say, exhortation, or just to remind you of some things that are eternal truths that don't change. First of all, Paul says here, "If you then be risen with Christ," in verse 1, "seek those things which are above." Now when he says seek those things which are above, he's talking about focus your attention on things which are above. Above what? Above this life is what he means. Above where Christ sits on the right hand of God. He says, set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. I was reading, and this is just by coincidence, last week I have a book I've been reading. I always have books I like to read, and I've always got books I'm working on. In the book I was reading, I just got through reading a chapter about a man named St. Augustine. Now, the Catholic Church calls him St. Augustine, and I don't mind calling him St. Augustine because in my mind all Christians are saints. That's the way I think. Paul just wrote to the saints that be at Rome, to the saints that be at Ephesus, and I think biblical terminology refers to all Christians as saints. So I don't mind calling Augustine a saint. I've read enough about him that I believe he was Christian, so I don't mind calling him St. Augustine. But he was a theologian and a thinker and a bishop of a town in the Roman Empire in the 5th century. And he experienced and lived through a very dramatic situation. On August 24th, 410 AD, the gates of Rome were opened at midnight, and the barbarian so-called Gothic hordes under a general named Alaric came into Rome and sacked the city. Now this was for Christians living in Rome at that time. Now remember, this was 410. This is 410 AD. It was an apocalyptic event because Rome had stood as a city for over 1,000 years. Now, at the time of Christ, the first Christians, Rome was seen as a persecutor of the Christians, and it was. But in the 4th century, a man named Constantine, a Christian, became emperor of Rome, and Rome was transformed from a pagan empire into a Christian empire. And so for the last 100 years, Rome had been basically under the control of Christian emperors. So for a man like Augustine, who was part of the church, when these Vandals... by the way, Alaric, the head of the Goths, he himself claimed to be a Christian. He professed Christ. As a matter of fact, when his Roman soldiers, or when his Gothic soldiers sacked some of the churches and the houses of worship, he made them take it all back. He protected the Christians. He protected the church. But it created a crisis of understanding, I guess, or let's put it this way. Augustine felt like he had some explaining to do, or as we say, he had some splaining to do, because how could it be that Rome, under the control of Christians, could experience this situation? And in order to explain the fall of Rome, or the fall of the city of Rome, he wrote a book. He spent many years on it, called The City of God. Now, Anton's probably back there cringing because the boys have to read this as part of their schooling. Anton has already read The City. Anton, did you enjoy The City of God? He's shaking his head. And Elliot has also read it. The City of God was written by Augustine to explain or to make the point. See, the pagans who were living in Rome, not everybody in Rome was a Christian. The pagans who were living in Rome blamed the Christians, and they said, you see, Christianity was a terrible thing because it has weakened the Roman Empire. But Augustine wrote The City of God, and in it he said there are two levels, there are two organizations or two communities of people at the same time on the earth. One is the city of man, which just constitutes mankind, but there is another community called the city of God, and it's the community of the saints, or it's the Christians, and they are two different groups, we might say. And here's a quote from him. I said all that to give you this quote, which I just read last week and I thought was good. That which animates secular society is the love of self, to the point of contempt for God. But that which animates divine society is the love of God, to the point of contempt for self. You see, they're going in opposite directions, is what he's saying. Let me read that again. That which animates secular society is the love of self. Now, if you look around the world, he's right, isn't he? Would you agree with that? I think that's true. He's saying the thing that animates or motivates the world, or secular society, is the love of self, even to the point of contempt for God. And I think you can sense that sometimes with people, and sometimes it's not even something you have to sense, it's right out in the open. Secular society is motivated by the love of self to the point of contempt for God. But you see, as Christians, we're not just living in the world. We are also part of a higher community. The city of God, or city of God's a good terminology. The Bible talks about the heavenly Jerusalem, which represents the saints. That which animates divine society, now that's what we're a part of, is the love of God to the point of contempt for self. And that's true. We love God first place. Now see, the thing about it is we are a part of both situations. We're in the world, but Jesus said, though we're in the world, we're not of the world. And really, the life that we have through God, or as Paul said here, set your affections on things above, not on things on the earth. Our first allegiance belongs to God. And the things concerning Christ and the things concerning the kingdom of God should be the things of first priority to us. Now, we have to take care of situations in our earthly lives, and we care about those things. But really, the most important thing is our connection with God. The most important thing is our heavenly life. And that's why Paul writes to the Colossians, and he reminds them. He says, set your affection, or another translation says, set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. For you are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. Verse 4 says, when Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then we shall appear with Him in glory. These are good verses. Anton, would you go back to verse 1 here in Colossians and give me the Message translation? I think it's really good. So if you're serious about living this new resurrection life with Christ, act like it. Pursue the things over which Christ presides. Okay? Don't shuffle along, eyes to the ground, absorbed with the things right in front of you. Look up. Be alert to what's going on around Christ. That's where the action is. In other words, what God is doing in the things concerning Christ, that's where the real action is. See things from His perspective. Okay, let's get it out. Your old life is dead. Your new life, which is your real life, even though invisible to spectators, is with Christ in God. He is your life. Let's get one. When Christ, your real life, remember, shows up again on this earth, you'll show up too, the real you, the glorious you. Meanwhile, be content with obscurity like Christ. What Paul is writing in these verses, his intent is to attract our attention to the fact that our real priority in life and the real thing that demands our attention as first priority is our relationship with God and the things concerning our relationship with God, or as Jesus called it, the kingdom of God.